Ashely Jeter reading from the Pickwick Papers, Chapter 18, in which Mr. Winkle expresses his distrust of his wife. For 2 days the Pickwickians remained at Eatanswill, anxiously awaiting the arrival of some intelligence from their revered leader. Mr. Winkle, in compliance with his most pressing invitation, continued to reside at Mr. Potts' house to devote his time to the companionship of his amiable lady. As Mr. Winkle was sitting alone in the breakfast room, the door was hastily thrown open and as hastily closed on the entrance of Mr. Pott, who, stalking majestically towards him and thrusting aside his proffered hand, ground his teeth as if to put a sharper edge on what he was about to utter, and exclaimed in a saw-like voice, "Serpent." "Sir?" exclaimed Mr. Winkle, starting from his chair. "Serpent, sir," repeated Mr. Winkle, raising his voice and then suddenly depressing it. "I said serpent, sir. When you have parted with a man at 2 o'clock in the morning on terms of the utmost good fellowship, and he meets you again at 9:30 and greets you as a serpent, it is not unreasonable to conclude that something of an unpleasant nature has occurred meanwhile." "Serpent, sir, serpent, Mr. Pott. What can you mean, sir? This is pleasantry." "Pleasantry, sir," explained Pott, with the motion of the hand indicative of a strong desire to hurl the Britannia metal teapot at the head of the visitor. "Pleasantry, sir, but no. I will be calm. I will be calm, sir." In proof of his calmness, Mr. Pott flung himself into a chair and foamed at the mouth. "My dear sir," interposed Mr. Winkle. "Dear sir?" replied Pott. "How dare you address me as dear sir? How dare you look me in the face and do it, sir?" "Well, sir, if you come to that," responded Mr. Winkle, "how dare you look me in the face and call me a serpent, sir?" "Because you are one," replied Pott. "Prove it, sir," said Mr. Winkle warmly. "Prove it." A malignant scowl passed over the profound face of the editor as he drew from his pocket the Independent of that morning, and laying his finger on a particular paragraph, threw the journal across the table to Mr. Winkle. The gentleman took it up and read as follows: "Our obscure and filthy contemporary, in some disgusting observations on the recent election for this borough, has presumed to violate the hallowed sanctity of private life, and to refer in a manner not to be misunderstood to the personal affairs of our late candidate. Aye, and notwithstanding his base defeat, we will add our future member, Mr. Fiskin. What does our dastardly contemporary mean? What would the ruffian say if we, setting at naught, like him, the decencies of social intercourse, were to raise the curtain which happily conceals his private life from general ridicule? What if we were to print the following effusion? Lines to a brass pot. O Pot, if you'd known how false she'd have grown when you heard the marriage bells tinkle, you'd have done then, I vow, what you cannot help now." "What?" said Mr. Pott solemnly. "What rhymes to tinkle, villain?" "What rhymes to tinkle?" said Mrs. Pott, whose entrance at the moment forestalled the reply. "What rhymes to tinkle? Why, winkle, I should conceive." Saying this, Mrs. Pott smiled sweetly on the disturbed Pickwickian and extended her hand towards him. The agitated young man would have accepted it in his confusion, had not Pott indignantly interposed. "Back, ma'am, back," said the editor. "Mr. P.," said his astonished lady. "Wretched woman, look here," explained the husband. "Look here, ma'am. Lines to a brass pot. Brass pot, that's me, ma'am. False, she'd had grown. That's you, ma'am, you." Pott dashed the current Eatanswill Independent at her feet. "Upon my word, sir," said the astonished Mrs. Pott, stooping to pick up the paper. Mr. Pott winced beneath the contemptuous gaze of his wife. He had made a desperate struggle to screw up his courage, but it was fast coming unscrewed again. "There appears nothing very tremendous in this little sentence, 'upon my word, sir,' when it comes to be read, but the tone of the voice in which it was delivered, and the look that accompanied it, both seeming to bear reference to some revenge to be visited upon the head of Pott, produced their effect upon him. Mrs. Pott read the paragraph, uttered a loud shriek, and threw herself at full length on the hearth rug. screaming in a manner which could leave no doubt of the propriety of her feelings on the occasion.